Welcome to our October 2020 Harmonic Public Brain Trust. I'm Steve Sikora, President of Harmonic Software Production Studios. I'm pleased to be your host this month. Many of you joined us last week where we did the Dallas FM Pug event, and we started the conversation about FileMaker add-ons. On our panel today, I'm joined by Robert Sandifer and Heather McHugh. Robert and Heather are both lead developers with Harmonic and have been eagerly exploring FileMaker add-ons since their announcement. Now, just a note, we'd love for you to join in the conversation today. You can use the YouTube top chat mode. You can enter your question or comment in the window at the bottom of that. And please make sure that your name is showing up properly so that all participants know who is talking. It's a uniform chat process where everybody sees things in real time. On our side, Jordan Brown, a new developer here at Harmonic. Sorry about still Paul Mitchell on the slide. That was a late breaking change that we forgot to make. Jordan Brown is going to be monitoring the chat stream and interjecting questions and comments as appropriate. So to discuss this today, we're going to start with some demos on how to create an add-on. We talked about what add-ons were last week. We went over some different types of add-ons and so forth. So this kind of picks up where that left off, how to create an add-on. Then we're going to share some important lessons learned. There's a few gotchas, there's a few things you need to be aware of about what does and doesn't work well. And finally, we're going to have a conversation, a group conversation. That's really the purpose of a public brain trust. And that conversation is going to be about what are we thinking about add-ons? Why do we want to create an add-on? When is it a good idea to use one? When isn't it a good idea to use one? And so forth. So without further ado, Heather is going to lead us in here.
All right, thank you, Steve. So I'm going to demonstrate how to create an add-on. Initially, I'm going to explain the types. There are essentially two types of add-ons that you can create, each with infinite possibilities, but their setup requirements vary somewhat. So the first thing you need to understand before you get started is what type of add-on are you creating? Will your add-on consist of a drag and drop object or perhaps an entire module? Perhaps it'll be JavaScript based, which by the way could be the case for either a drag and drop or a module based add-on. Where will you start? You're always going to start with a separate file. You'll use a separate source file for the creation of each of your add-ons. What will your add-on include? Well, with the notable exceptions of security and a template-defined layout, your add-on will include all of the schema and data objects from your source file. What's required? Your source file will need a button for creating the add-on. And if your add-on will be added to another file via drag and drop, your source file will need to include a template layout that follows the required naming convention, which I'll go over with you. And if your add-on includes a table that's expected to dynamically connect to existing schema when it's added to another file, a notes module, for example, then the template layout in your source file will also need to include some defining objects that follow required naming conventions. Robert will cover that for you this morning. You need to know what's optional. You can, but aren't required to define dynamic connections. You can customize the category, description, and even the icon seen by users when they select your add-on. Your source file can include sample data, or your source file can be completely devoid of records or even tables. So what else should you know? You should also understand the role of UUIDs as identifiers for each add-on or add-on instance within your destination files. You should also be aware of how context affects your add-on. And because we don't want to devote sufficient time today for a brain trust discussion, our tutorials will be limited to the basics. We'll cover enough to get you started and refer you to the resources we've identified for more in-depth learning. To demonstrate how easy creating an add-on can be, I'm going to make one for the navigation bar that I use frequently on multiple layouts in multiple apps. So my add-on type will be a drag and drop group of objects. My components include button bars with hide conditions and conditional formatting already defined, one script, and 2 custom functions. Any add-on that will be added to a file via drag and drop must have a layout named exactly as shown here, _FM add-on directives template _EN. Obviously the EN is for English, so if you're providing multi-language support, you'll have multiple layouts with different suffixes on their naming. Again, _FM add-on directives template _EN. Now, because my add-on doesn't need to add a table or records, I've removed the tables from my file. Then I added a button to my layout that performs the script step, save a copy as add-on package. This will use my current Windows title as the name of the add-on, and I've turned off the replace UUID setting because this drag and drop object might be added to multiple different layouts, and I don't want it also adding a new instance of my scripts at the same time. Then I group the objects that I want to include in my add-on, and now my source file is ready to actually create the add-on. So let's actually create the add-on and get it ready to share. After switching into browse mode, we simply click our Create Add-on button. A new Finder window will open to the location where our add-on package has been stored. And this is where we'll customize the details seen by users. First, we'll edit the info.json file, where we'll customize details such as attribution and URL. Now, after saving and closing the info.json file, I'm going to open the info_en.json. And notice the other files for multi-language support. In here, I'm going to modify the description and category. Now, the category determines where your add-on appears within the picker for adding available add-ons, sorry. And if I want to support additional languages, again, I can simply modify additional info.whatever-language.json files. Now, I haven't figured out exactly where the features show up. Perhaps this is for the marketplace. So for now, I'm not really going to fill this one in. After saving and closing this file, I'm going to replace the default Claris icons that were attached automatically to my add-on so that when we select them, they'll show the icon that I want shown. Okay, now after closing everything up, verifying that my icons look like they should. Now after closing everything up, I'm actually going to quit FileMaker. This ensures that my edits to the package will appear as expected. Then I'll reopen FileMaker and create a brand new blank file. Now, the first thing I'm going to do after I open this new blank file that I've created is I'm going to just add a bunch of records because my add-on is a navigation tool. So let's add a few records real quick. Okay, I'm going to enter layout mode, go to my add-ons panel, select add, and there we see my nav buttons. You can also see other items. I'm going to choose the nav button. There it is. I can drag and drop it. You may have noticed also that it was available under the harmonic category. Test my add-on. Everything works as expected. Easy peasy, super simple. Next, Robert's going to demonstrate how to create an add-on that will actually dynamically create relationships when it's added to another file. Just click that one right start.
It's already started.
Click it.
Okay, making add-ons with a dynamic relationship. I'm going to go through this fairly quickly, but I'm going to try to cover all the necessary items and naming conventions. I'm going to show two examples. One example is going to be of a simple notes portal with a dynamic relationship, and the second will be a join portal, kind of like an invoice portal with a dynamic relationship. So first I'm going to open my notes add-on, take a quick look at the schema here. One table, 3 fields, 0 records. Very, very simple. We'll go take a look at the layout. First, I want to point out here that the layout is in fact named accordingly. This layout name is what tells the add-on mechanism when we go to drag this out, this layout contains information that tells us how we're going to attach this to our file. This also tells the add-on mechanism to not include this layout as a usable layout. All right, so on my layout, we've got a few things out here. Obviously, the portal is the main attraction. If you look, you see here that I have my group on the very bottom. This is the item that will be dragged out. The portal is local here to my notes table. The button bar, I'll get into the button bar in just a minute. There we can see there, this is just here at this local table. The next point of interest is going to be my field up here in the top. This group that this field is in is what is telling the add-on mechanism that this group object contains the instructions to hook it up dynamically. Using the proper naming convention and write table. So now the button bar, I want to take a look over here in this button bar. You see what looks like some gobbledygook here. This add-on instance UUID variable, this will get substituted out when we drag it out onto the layout, and it will substitute it with that instance of the add-on's UUID. So every time you drag it out, it gets a new UUID. This is how we can capture that information and use this in scripting, use this to pass into our scripts to say, hey, this is the instance of the add-on that has called the script. And in a similar fashion, the layout primary key will do the same thing. It will substitute out when we drag it out, and this will give us the table name, : field name of this layout's primary key. And in my third button, I basically have that same variable, but I have that variable wrapped in a get field. And we'll see how this pans out. Now, in your add-on file, you'll see that these do not resolve. They just say what they said. And notice the display dialog. So I'm going to save this. And I will go make a new empty file. Notice the file is simple. There's not much here. I'll go get that add-on. And I'll drag it out. You can already see we have our UUID and our layout primary key. Now notice a little bug here. That dialog was not doing that in my add-on file. And we have the actual IDs of the records. So this is important to note, because this is how you can program your add-on before it's added into a file to be able to retrieve information about the file that you have dragged it into and tell your scripting what fields you're working with, what records you're working with, which version of the add-on you're working with. So that was the example of a simple dynamic relationship. Just using a single hookup connection. My next example is a little bit more complicated. This is going to be an example of a join table, similar to like an invoice. So you notice we have our join and we have a master table. Very simple tables. 3 fields here, primary key, name, and amount. Here in the join table we have our keys to hook it up with, and then our typical data fields. No relationships. When we look at layout mode, we have the object that's going to be dragged out, our save button, and the fields to describe our connection. The layout is named accordingly. Here I have a couple of extra fields. I got a join table and a left table. This is going to explain how to hook up all 3 tables when we drag this out. So I'm going to save this. I'll go back to my previous file. I'll drag this out here. There we go. We have our new UUID. It also knows the primary keys. If we look at the graph, you can see everything's been hooked up. See, my previous note add-on is still there. If we look at these relationships, we'll see that FileMaker has added the delete and create options off of my untitled table for each one of them. And we can see that our little invoice portal here is working. So this was an example of a little more complicated hookup. And that's my demo. That's what we have there.
All right. Thank you, Robert. I can see also that your last demo there had a value list too.
Yes, it did.
That came in with it.
It did have a value list.
Right, so value lists are one of the schema components that will come over with your add-ons. So we've learned a few lessons in our exploration of add-ons of late, so we're going to share a few of those with you today. First of all, module-oriented add-ons do not always require that FM add-ons directive template layout. But without it, your Create Add-on button will in fact be on the file after you drag your add-on in. It will also include your Create Add-on button, which if what your add-on is doing is providing a demo file for someone that they're then going to create an add-on to put in their files is fine, but in most cases that may not be what you want. Here's the first example here that I'm showing you is that grouped layouts break your anchoring. So in this case, we actually have the title field expanding, and so that right column header block should be moving to the right when we expand our layout. But because all of our objects have to be grouped together as one in order to be included with the add-on, they break that anchoring. And so that is something that you'll need to design accordingly for.
And we think that's a bug, or we think that's a
You know,
permanent situation?
So I haven't tested yet, and it's a simple test to do, is just group those same objects on your layout without creating an add-on, expand it, and see if it's broken. So I don't know if, and I didn't test that yet. But
So that's the logical follow-up question,
Right,
though, right?
exactly.
Is that just inherent FileMaker behavior?
or is it an
Or
add-on?
is it add-on specific
Exactly.
gyrations that...
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So in this example, what we're showing is, on the left, this is the source, and on the right, that's the result when we dragged on our My Notes add-on. So we had a button bar with a delete and an add button, and they had, hide conditions built in, and that button bar was inside of the portal. When we drag that as an add-on into our destination file, it duplicates those individual button bar buttons and just kind of puts them there off to the right or off to the left. And isn't that fun, right? So now our user has to go in and clean all that up, right? So button bars don't work inside of a portal, and my guess, though I haven't tested it yet, is that they probably don't work well inside of other objects either. like popovers and things like that. Again, I haven't tested that one, but that's one gotcha we found right away.
That was my experience as well.
That was your experience as well? Okay. So in the second example, what we've done instead is we've actually just used individual buttons. And that works just fine. No problem. Our next example, we added a column header, and this is very common. Someone will put a text object on the layout and then attach a button to it. Like if I click this column header, now I'm going to sort, right, by this column. So we did this here. I attached a button to that. It didn't do anything, but I attached a button to that text, and then I dragged it in as an add-on, and guess what? It duplicated that text. Same issue as we saw before. And this is not inside the portal. This is outside of the portal, but it's a text object that has been grouped as a button. It's like a group outside of the portal within the group that we created our add-on with. The solution to that was now to use a button bar. So it's the opposite solution of what you do inside of a portal, right? And the button bar outside of the portal, but again, within the group of objects that are contained in my add-on, they work perfectly as column headers. So button bars, except if they're inside of a portal or other object. The other thing is that you can resave your add-on. You're going to test it, and you're going to make changes, and you're going to resave it. If you do that, all that JSON that you edited and the description that you wrote and company link and all that, that's not going to be replaced. So you can resave your add-on as many times as you need to. It will not touch your JSON. However, it will replace your icons. So if you've resaved your add-on, please remember to change your icons again.
And the icons are what show up in the add-on bar.
Correct. They show up in the add-on panel, and they show up basically when you're kind of going to the marketplace, the add-on picker.
Okay.
They're going to show up there. They're going to show up when you select it and give you the description, et cetera. Right.
So if it's something that's truly internal, we may not care.
Correct.
But if it's something that you're trying to productize or
Exactly.
have a real specific icon around.
Exactly. And it's
it
not
needs
that
to
it
be
ends
in
up
kind
with,
of a build checklist.
Yeah, it doesn't end up with no icon. It
Yeah.
ends up with the Claris
Yeah.
icon by default.
Okay.
And the next thing I wanted to point out, because I watched a lot of videos and read a lot about how to create add-ons and that, and they kept referring to the bottommost group on your layout, right? So I grouped a couple different things on a layout, created my add-on, and I did not get the results I wanted. I dragged something on, there wouldn't be anything there. So when they refer to the bottommost group on your layout, they don't mean the one like in the footer of your layout. They mean the one at the bottom of your objects panel, which Robert pointed out to me means they're in the back, so you can shift it to the back. But to me, I want to look there and see that it's the bottommost group. That is what's going to be included for my drag-on add-on.
So probably the first thing that gets drawn on a normal layout, right? Because it draws back to front.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Right, but if you're making changes to your layout in your source file and you ungroup something and then you regroup it, that group is now at the top
Yeah.
by default.
Yeah.
So
So again, something you probably need a build checklist if you're doing anything complicated.
exactly,
So you don't forget stuff.
exactly. And you'll notice here that I actually have more than one group on my layout,
Yeah.
but only that bottom group is going to be available in my drag-on.
Okay.
Which means if you have multiple groups of things that you want included, you need to then group those groups together to be included. All right, so I'm going to demonstrate the importance of naming conventions and grouping using a module type add-on. For this example, I started with a backup copy of the virtual sort demo by Jeremy Banty, which includes 6 layouts, 6 tables, 1 value list, 4 custom functions, multiple scripts, and thousands of sample records. Other than the addition of a create add-on button, no additional changes of any kind were made to the file. I then installed the resulting add-on into my blank file, and I went to the demo instructions layout, where it didn't look so bad. You can see a little bit of style difference. You know, the font size is a little different, but you know, it didn't look so bad. But when I moved to the next layout, oops, sorry, come on, didn't look so bad. Okay, then I moved to the next layout, and whoa, that isn't going to fly, right? you can't read your data because the formatting is so bad, right? But all the functionality worked perfect as expected, but the results were clearly unacceptable. So I returned to my source file. I grouped everything on the basic portal layout. Remember, I didn't make any modifications to this file originally other than adding the Create Add-on button. So there were no groupings or special things in the layout. I just wanted to see, hey, what happens if I turn this file into an add-on? So I went back into that layout of the second layout, and I grouped everything on that layout, thinking, well, that'll fix it. No, it was worse. So remember that gotcha that I shared a few minutes ago about text objects that have been turned into buttons? Well, on a layout where they're outside the portal, every single one of those, first, last, zip, and unsort, the text objects underneath them got duplicated, and they're all crammed up there in the left corner.
Nice.
And the really beautiful thing was that was on every single one of the 6 layouts. Now, there was only one layout that didn't have column header button bars, and that was the first one. So the first time I did this, I went in and I cleaned every one up because I was the only one trying it. Well, you certainly don't want other users doing that, or certainly not in a commercial product. So that is a gotcha. Now, then I went in, again, to the original file, and I applied the right naming conventions. The naming conventions include things like a double underscore at the start of my layouts. And so you'll see where it says virtual sort basic portal on the left example. On the right example, it says double underscore virtual sort, right? So that's my layout name that's showing there. I've added that. You'll notice I've also put a pipe in because I'm following a certain naming convention that matches the naming convention of the objects of the portal and the dynamic connections that Robert explained earlier, et cetera. And you'll notice that all my styles now came over exactly as I defined them. And if I were using a custom theme, my theme would have come over with my add-on as well. But absent the proper naming conventions being used, you can get some very unexpected and undesirable results. This brief demo will illustrate a few more details, including the fact that the major schema objects that are included with your add-on are shown when the add-on is selected. And you don't have to figure all that out. It does that automatically for you. Now, because this add-on is not a drag and drop tool, there's no need to drag anything onto the layout after I choose it and add it. Now, this one takes a few moments to add because, again, remember I said it has thousands of sample records. But I add it to my file, and then I can see, look, it's added my 6 layouts, and they work as expected, etc. But, oh, there's that one with the, yeah, look what happens there. So that's still broken, and there is no way to fix that. You just have to design your layout differently. Now, you'll notice that my table occurrences that were added were all a different color, and they were positioned in a certain location. Your add-ons will retain their original graph positioning colors, and if you had notes, those would be there as well. So here I'm just showing that everything I wanted to add has been added, and everything works as expected. Now I go back into my layout, or into my graph, and I say, well, maybe I want to make a connection to this add-on graph. But then I changed my mind. Now I'm going to uninstall my add-on. I try to uninstall it, but look, it's still there. I can still see it. And look, I've still got 7 layouts. Let's take a look at them. Oh, they did not look healthy. So, but no, my scripts are still there. Oh, my tables are there. All my relationships are gone, except for the one that I added. So my layouts are screwed up, but my add-on didn't go away. So I'm going to break that. I'm going to take out that relationship that I added, uninstall, and look, I'm down to my 1 layout. My schema's back to normal. I have no scripts. I have no custom functions, et cetera. Then it worked. So that really just illustrates, in my mind, the importance of the dynamic connections for data in your add-on. Now, this particular example isn't one that you would want dynamically connecting to your existing solution, but if it is something that could be dynamically connected or users could connect it, you can go either way, I would suggest you opt for the dynamic connection, because if your add-on dynamically connects to your file when you install it in your file, then when you uninstall, it doesn't break anything. It takes that relationship with it. It just knows the right thing to do, and it doesn't break like this example I just showed you. Now, there are an increasing number of add-on related videos popping up in the community, including Todd Geist's session from this year's Claris Engage, which is excellent, and I recommend you look it up. But for in-depth instruction and step-by-step guidance through the various otherwise undocumented technical requirements and all of the naming conventions, the dynamic UUIDs, et cetera, I highly recommend Matt Petrowski's video, Everything About Add-ons, available from ISO Productions FileMaker Magazine, and a link for that's been included with our video's description today. So I'm going to pass this to Steve now for the brain trust part of our
That's right.
session.
And I would again encourage anyone who's with us virtually, make sure to throw your 2 cents in, and Jordan will call it out. Really, these were the questions that we came up with to start with yesterday. And Fred, I need you to actually switch to the slide there. So let's just go through them to start with. So what can we do and not do with add-ons? Now, Heather and Robert gave us a good kind of introduction to that conversation with some of our lessons learned and some gotchas and so forth. But I think I'm interested in spending a couple minutes just throwing some ideas out there and brainstorming things that we might want to try that we might not know the answer to, some things we might already know the answer to. You know, let's just think about what could we do with add-ons, right? Then that kind of leads into the next question. As developers, where should we use those add-ons versus other methods? And I think there's a conversation to be had there around we could do it with an add-on, but should we do it with an add-on? And I'm talking about as a developer, right? So what do I get by being able to just click and add or drag it out versus some of the other more traditional things that FileMaker gives us, import, copy, paste, things of that nature, right? What's my benefit? What's my downsides? Then, when should we build them for customers, right? What does an add-on give us for maybe an established customer situation, not a third party, but one of our customers, an existing system that we build and maintain? What would we use an add-on for there? Related to that, but I think really a different conversation is, what do you productize, right? When does it make sense to build an add-on as a product for someone that's not our customer, but is someone else's customer? And I was talking about that last week a little bit, where I think the add-on, at a conceptual level at least, gives us a tool that we haven't had before, especially a company like Harmonic. We don't build developer tools, right? Full stack developer tools like FM Perception, for instance. We don't have a tool like that we sell to other developers. We also don't build vertical market apps that we sell multiple copies over and over in a vertical. But maybe there's a space or an opportunity for us to build an add-on, a piece of an application that might kind of go across market or across type. So when should we build an add-on as a product? Then I think the last two here, what kinds of add-ons do we want to see, right? What are we looking for out there? What do we hope someone builds? What do we want to challenge somebody to build? Whether it's us, our team, or somebody else. And then the last one here, will access to the marketplace via add-ons open the door to other opportunities? So if this add-on, Claris has built an add-on section of the marketplace, they're clearly going to put energy into that. Is it kind of like a gateway drug, right? If someone downloads an add-on, what else does that engender? Maybe that add-on is a hookup to a whole nother product or a whole nother subsystem that you can sell or offer and so forth. So basically, I just want to talk through these. We've got, give or take, half an hour here. We've got 6 items, right? So that's 5 minutes an item. We're not going to answer any of these questions in complete depth, right? The point here is to get the conversation started about these kind of things, right? And get all of us kind of thinking about it and just using the vernacular and shifting in our mind what an add-on does for us. So let's start with that top one. What can we do and not do with add-ons? And I'm gonna ask my panel to kind of get us rolling here because they've done some thinking about this that some of the rest of us may not have done. But what can we do? And I'm going to put over here, not do. So Robert and Heather, I'm actually kind of interested in the right-hand column. Do we have an example of what we cannot do? Now, you showed us some gotchas,
Right.
right? So we can't do certain kinds of styling and so forth,
Right.
And have it translate across cleanly.
Right.
But what's another thought of something we can't do?
Something else that we can't do are multi-file situations.
Right.
The add-on itself does not support multi-file. If your customer solution is some sort of a data separation model, then an add-on may not be ideal for that. If it's some kind of just a widget thing that you want to throw in there, perhaps.
Like the nav, that
Right,
would be
right,
okay.
Right.
Yeah.
But another module, you may not want to attach it to that system.
Yeah,
As
where
an add-on.
where the add-on comes with table, schema, stuff that logically might need to go in the data file.
Right.
And then the UI needs to go in the UI file. So would it be possible, and of course we have a lot of systems that are like that, right? That are 2 files, 5 files, 10 files, you know, you name it.
Mm-hmm.
Would it be possible to kind of construct the add-on in 2 parts and have them somehow work together, right? Where there's a UI part and a data part.
So potentially I would say yes. And I think then you'd have to ask yourself the question, if you need to do it in 2 parts, because what you're doing is, say, creating another file in your system. So let's say we're adding a security module, for example, and it's got a component that should be in your data file, but the security should be in its own file. Then maybe what you need to be providing is that separate file and an add-on for the other file. Or you could create 2 separate add-ons with the instruction that the security add-on is added to a blank file and starting from scratch. So an add-on can be used to basically create a brand new file,
Right.
essentially.
So
you have to ask your question, which one's going to be the best path?
So that kind of gets into documentation.
Yes.
And we saw a little bit of what we get for free.
Right.
When you click the add-on, FileMaker kind of assembles a list of here's all the stuff in this.
Right.
But it doesn't give you kind of a how-to guide, steps 1 through 10.
Exactly. Now, I've looked at, there are a few available, and we shared them last week at the FM Pug meeting. So the FM log example, for example, that demo, that add-on basically installed a demo, similar to what I did with the virtual sort demo, and just turned it into an add-on. And so it came with documentation. So there was a tab that gave you the configuration instructions, and a tab that told you other things you needed to do, et cetera. So it basically self-documented, but it did that by including in itself, in its package, a layout of documentation, which after you've installed the add-on, you could easily delete that layout from your file, and once you've done and followed the instructions. But those are considerations. How are you going to document it if it's not so simple like the nav bar that really doesn't require documentation? I think to help answer the questions too, it might be helpful to explain why I did what I did using the virtual sort. The reason I chose to use that as my first complex test of an add-on was because I used that technique in several different files and several different solutions over the years I've used it, but it requires custom functions, scripts, value lists, relationships that are set up, and of course a virtual list table. So there are multiple components, multiple schema components that you have to create in the right order when you add them to your solution. Now the demo file gives you everything you need, and you can copy and paste those custom functions and those scripts into a file, but it can take, 5-10 minutes to do that every time you want to add this functionality to a new system, whereas I wanted to just add it.
Yeah.
And have it all work without finding out after the fact that I did something out of sequence.
Yeah, so seemingly, let me put that in other words. So seemingly widgets and tools that are not data schema dependent, that are hard to add.
Right.
Your little nav widget, that's pretty easy to copy
Right.
paste. I mean,
Right.
it makes a nice demo,
Yeah.
but it's not hard to add.
Right.
On the other hand, something like the virtual sort that has a whole bunch of componentry with it that needs to be assembled properly to work.
Right.
But it's not data schema dependent.
Right.
It doesn't matter if we've got a data separation model or so forth. That's a good target because it saves us time.
Right.
It makes sure that it happens quite cleanly. I mean, we can hand it to a brand new developer or a real experienced developer
Right.
or even a non-developer in some cases.
Well, and think, how many times have we copied and pasted a script that we thought was simple from one file to another, and then we scroll through the resulting script and we see function missing, layout missing, subscript missing, so any process or widget that requires multiple components is a potential candidate.
Yeah. So your example, Robert, gave us an example of how we can attach to data schema, right? We can hook up to the simple example being I've got a child object that I can hook up to the logical primary key of the table that I'm on. And that, we saw that same thing last week with some of the email add-ons and the address add-ons and so forth that Claris includes by default with FileMaker 19. So in those cases, that's real straightforward, where it's just a child object. The one you showed with the invoice, with the join and so forth, that was a little bit more complicated. So it is possible, but it's not as easy to construct, data integrated. So I don't know if that goes with not do, but that's a sort of at least a warn, think about. A data integrated add-on is going to require more testing, more thought, more kind of imagining how is it going to tie in with 10 other systems I've never seen before. Right? What are the kind of gotchas and unintended consequences there?
And another major not in the creation of an add-on, but in the deployment of an add-on that I would throw in there is the don't fail to consider what will happen if this is uninstalled. If
Right.
you're installing an add-on that is, say, a group of custom functions that you use all the time, and you just think it'll be easy to drop those in as an add-on, and that's all it is. Well, what if other developers come in and create dependencies using those custom functions? They don't realize that is part of that custom function they've used as part of an add-on that someone else could come in and uninstall at some point later. So particularly in an environment and a business like ours where we have multiple developers, those are some considerations, and I think we'll need to have further discussions on rules of the road.
Something else that we're currently unable to do is control the options in the relationships that are dynamically drawn. The allow create and delete are automatically turned on by FileMaker. In the second example I gave of the little invoice, that is ideal from our primary table to the join table, but that's not necessarily ideal from the join to the master, even though that got turned on. In Matt's video, he discusses that, and he explains the difference between doing the joins dynamically like I did or pre-hardwiring the master table into the join table.
Okay.
So that's something else to consider. If you don't want some of those options turned on, then you either have to remember to go turn them off, or you have to design it a little different way.
Yeah, so by default, just to make sure I understand, by default, create is on, delete is on, right?
Yes.
Cascading deletes are going to be a thing,
Right.
and create, stick my cursor in the portal, I can type away.
Right.
So if I want some kind of programmatic control around that create, I don't get that by default.
Right,
Right.
All right.
right.
All right. I just want to involve the room here, the virtual room, the physical room. Anybody else have any thoughts?
I have thoughts on the second bullet point.
Wow, we're not at the second bullet point yet, Eric.
Okay. Well, then I think these thoughts are great. That's.
All right, fair enough. To the second, did you have something, Matt?
Oh, so are we talking about not do, so like should not do or can not do?
Yeah, I think probably both.
Okay, so should not do sounds to me like anything with an intricate layout, with layout objects,
Yeah.
right? Because your mileage may vary on how they copy over. It sounds like it's maybe as a product not quite ready for prime time in those ways. And so if what we're actually trying to push forward is, I spent, 5 days on this layout of super coolest way to add addresses ever, and I want to pop this into another solution, we might lose a lot of that work if we do that.
The exception to that would be, and Matt does talk about this at the very tail end of his video, would be if you're trying to add a theme. And so if you're trying to add a theme, you do want to be adding a layout, but it's for a very specific purpose in that
So
case.
all of those gotchas that you showed disappear when you're trying to add a theme.
No,
I think they're irrelevant.
They,
Okay.
they disappear when you get into the tedious renaming of your layouts and the grouped objects. If what you're delivering as an add-on is really a demo file, like my example was, then yes, you want to go through that effort. I mean, it probably took me 25 minutes to go through that whole demo file and wire it up properly once I realized what I needed to do to fix all the errors. But that may or may not be something that you want to be doing. If you're modifying something existing that you use, then you probably don't want to do that. But if you know what those issues are ahead of time, you build it properly. But for the most part, I agree with what you're saying.
Now, is this whole add a theme, is that preview functionality,
No.
or
It's
is
not
that?
available yet. It is not available yet. He says in the video that it's coming.
His is not available yet.
Oh, his is not
His
available.
his
Okay.
theme studio.
So the theme,
Okay.
okay.
Yeah, it does bring a theme over now if you're using a specific theme.
Okay, so in theory, we could, and this kind of gets into the second question, so we'll say this and then let Eric throw his thing in. As a developer, we could use the add-ons as a way to inject specific theme into a new file. So if we've got an established customer solution with an established and well-detailed theme,
Right.
but we need to add a whole new file, rather than duplicating the file to inherit the theme, which has sometimes some unintended gotchas and consequences, we could use it via an add-on
Correct.
to add the theme in. All right, interesting. And I'm guessing Petrowski with his theme studio is probably thinking about what's an easier, cooler way for me to let people inject my themes into their
Exactly.
solutions.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah. Eric, what's your thought on number 2? As developers, where should we use add-ons versus other methods?
So one of the first ones that came to mind for me was, we're setting up a new file, whether that's for a client that we're working on or it's some internal solution or whatever. At Harmonic, there's a certain set of custom functions that we're all just used to using because they're in quote unquote all of the files.
Right.
Except when you find yourself in a file and you try to use a custom function or something and it's not there. And then you go, okay, I have to import this. Where is it from? Maybe I'm in one client system on a virtual machine, remote connection, and I can't just import from host because I don't have access to the other, client system, and then I have to go hunt it down and copy and paste. And so it would be kind of nice to have an add-on for internal use that is, here are the 20 most frequently used custom functions that Harmonic uses in our development, and here are the 5 most commonly used dynamic scripts that we use. So, a few months ago, in one of our brain trusts, I talked through the button action script,
Right.
which is completely context independent.
Right.
There's no schema related. It's all just parameter based. So to be able to import that group of stuff, right, in a sense of it'd be like importing a FileMaker library, right? Just like you would use a library for JavaScript or Python or whatever else.
Right, and in part because the button action script does use some custom functions
Right.
that not everyone would have, right?
Right. So to be able to start a new solution or get into an existing solution and say, put in all the stuff that I'm used to working with,
Yeah.
and then I can just start moving forward. And then again, that handles all of the dependencies of, okay, well, this custom function relies on this other custom function, which relies on these other two custom functions.
Right.
So one nice thing about that is that we could proceduralize that. We could put it through a code review process. We could all agree, all right, that is the version that we want right now. If it's a FileMaker 19 solution, that's the version we want. Maybe we updated something to use a while loop, right? So there could be a notes page about this is our version 1.4 default set of functions and scripts, and then we eventually replace that with version 1.5, something like that, right? Something we can maintain. And I could see that could scale well both for organizational development, like we tend to do, but also as a single developer, both within our organization as well as other folks out there in the community, having a file or a collection of files that are basically add-ons that are things that I use a lot. Maybe it's not something we have in our kind of default
Right.
pre-flight package,
Right.
but it's something that I use all the time. So I'm kind of thinking it in my head as like a logical one would be a JSON package, right? An add-on JSON package, right? Where if we're getting into a solution where we use JSON a bunch inside of that solution, we've developed both individually and then as a company, we've developed a variety of additional functions and methodologies for interacting with JSON that don't come by default from FileMaker or with FileMaker from Claris. So just that JSON package that maybe isn't dropped in at the beginning of a brand new system, but maybe is dropped in as soon as we start, oh, you know what, let's store this in JSON, or let's transfer data using JSON, or we're using API integration with this, or whatever it is. So this is as an example, but basically, kind of function packages, I think is what I'm talking about. So, and the obvious ones here are, at least to me, are your custom functions and associated scripts. Are there other kind of objects, though, that should go, and maybe a layout for documentation or example? Are there other objects, though, that we can think of that should maybe go in this, kind of base setup?
You mentioned documentation, and I could see the value of creating some documentation add-ons. We have some processes, for example, in ISS, some workflows that are fairly complex or a little bit opaque. Delete record would be a custom function, in my opinion, that requires some explanation. You can read the custom function and it looks real simple, except what it's actually doing is like creating a record in a log table, and the creation of that record in itself triggers something to happen that in effect then actually deletes your record and records the results. So there's magic happened here that isn't obvious, and it is multiple components. It's one custom function, but the way it's working actually involves other pieces. And maybe we would create an add-on that is documentation of that.
Right.
Or that when we add that function, we add it as an add-on so that we can include a very specific demo, for example, that maybe even could be something that could be removed.
Right.
after the user, after the developer
So
who's
it-
now learned this
It leaves
technique.
the function,
Right,
but maybe there's a layout and a script that are clearly named, delete me after added. or,
delete
you know,
me after you figured it out.
delete me after you get this.
Right, exactly.
That drops it in, you know, you interact with it, use it, and then, I get how it works, I understand. I've got it working now over
Right.
here on my copy. I can delete the proof of concept, kind of
Right.
the initial hello world
Exactly,
that I get by default.
yeah.
So I think another thing as developers that might be interesting to try an add-on with would be for client systems where we have common items on every single layout. You start with these items on one layout, but then you have to ungroup them, you have to move them, you may have to tweak a few of them. But taking just these basic layout items and using them as an add-on gives you the ability to have that master handy right there on your sidebar every time to drag out for your new layout. Now,
Versus what we
Law-
do now, which is find a layout that's close to what we want and duplicate it, right?
Delete everything off.
And then redirect everything.
So
Right.
what do you think about maybe for like version upgrades as well, right? So let's say that we've got a nav object or something that is fairly complicated, fairly elaborate, and we need to make a change, but then we need to replicate that same change to 20 other layouts, right? Conceivably, package just that part up as an add-on, update the add-on, and then bam, 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 bam.
Right.
Yeah, much easier.
Yeah, okay, interesting.
How simple is that? Like if you change a script or something and that script is part of that add-on, what all is involved in updating that?
Right, so
stuff?
I have an answer that I think is accurate to that. Long-term testing will will prove one way or another for sure. But in my add-on of the nav bar, when I set up my create add-on button, it had two options, one for where am I going to get the name of the add-on from, which is my current window name, and then the other option was to reset the UUIDs. And what I found was, the first time I did it, I had that turned on because Matt Petrowski's video said, you're probably usually going to have this turned on, right? So I thought, well, I'll have to leave it turned on. So I drag it onto a layout, everything works, I get my script and my scripts and everything that I'm supposed to get. Then I go to another layout and I drag it again, and it added duplicate scripts. Right? Because every time it was adding it on, it was saying, you are a new total unto yourself instance of this, and everything that comes with you should also be its own instance of it. And at that point, I actually had a table in my add-on. So in my schema, it was adding, nav buttons table, and then nav buttons 2 and nav buttons 3 every time I added that add-on. So I think it's in the how you create the add-on that could prevent it from creating new scripts or not connecting to the original script.
So something that Matt mentioned something about future versioning. What I don't think we currently have the ability to do is take that existing stuff and without putting new copies in, update what was already there.
We can't retroactively update what we've already dragged onto a layout. That's true.
Not yet, right.
But we could, if we started with an add-on that is, these are how my headers are going to work. So we've got a header add-on that we've created. If we go back to that original source table, a source file that we created that header add-on from, and we change it to here's our new version, and then we just replace the add-on. We recreate it. Again, it's now going to replace all of the XML, which includes all the schema pieces that it needs and how it's going to work. But it doesn't replace our JSON. Well, it doesn't replace our icons, as I pointed out. But anyway, so we replace it. It's actually updating the exact same add-on. So all we would have to do in our layouts is we'd uninstall the add-on. That would eliminate the need for us to go, select all those header objects and delete them. We'd uninstall the add-on, reinstall it, and just redrag it. And it would, in fact, use the same scripts.
Right,
Or-
okay.
Or if we didn't want it to delete a script because we've now created some other dependencies that use that script, we could in fact go into the layouts, remove our headers, and just redrag the same add-on. And it would now be the way our new version was.
So you just got to, in the header object as an example, is build it in a way that it's not going to be too tied in to the rest of the system, so
Right.
that way you don't run into those issues that you showed of when you uninstall.
Exactly.
So I guess I've got a statement and a question. Going back to the new file setup bullet point that you've got listed up there, Steve. So custom functions and base scripts. I think also commonly used value lists. So like the value list of one.
One,
Right.
right?
Underscore one, yes.
Right, that's literally just used for checkboxes. And
Right.
yes, it's super simple to create, but to have to go in and create it
But we already have a set.
every time, it's just
Yeah.
like, okay, well, wouldn't it be nice if that just came in, or if there's something that you commonly do that where you
Well,
want.
and also it could
Right.
be with a conventional naming convention, right?
Right.
In most of our systems, the one value list is _1, right?
Right.
So that it sorts and it's findable. But somebody brand new to our organization might not know that, might add another one value list, right? So if there's an expectation that this file has all of the default way we want things done,
Right.
then, then you can set that expectation company-wide, and we can have a conversation about when, should we change it, should we extend it?
Another example would be perhaps a startup script process where maybe we have a sessions table that we're gonna, log new sessions when they come in, and there's a whole workflow there where we're gonna create a session record, we're gonna take them to a specific layout, we're gonna maybe, load our globals, et cetera. That could be, and a utility table or something. And those aren't difficult things to do, but that's time where if you've done it before and now you're giving someone else, oh, well, add these pieces, well, add the add-on and everything's gonna be there.
Did you have a question, Anthony?
No.
So,
All right, so we're at an hour. I wanna respect our timing here, and clearly there's a lot to discuss. We kind of got through 2 bullet points and glazed across and around the tops of these others, but so I wanna just hit it real fast. I want 1 comment per bullet point for the rest, right? So just throw it out there. Anybody, don't bother passing the mic. Just anybody that has a thought for customers. When should we build add-ons for our customers? What do we think?
When it's something that we're doing consistently the same in every file, like if we're gonna create a nav menu
Right.
the same way in every customer file, then
So,
we might as well make
Yeah,
that
so like the update thing we were talking about,
Mm-hmm.
that would be a potential example. So one of our customers is Lockheed. They won't let us inside their system directly, electronically, right? We have to kind of do everything arm's length. So maybe just as a patch tool almost, right? As a way to deploy a new set of functionality for a version,
Right.
kind of just a version deployment mechanism.
Right.
Anybody else thoughts for customers? All right, moving on. So add-ons for products. What do we think? So my dream of we could build an add-on that we could put out there and sell for $1 or $5 or $10 or whatever, kind of the app economy thing. Any ideas?
Role-based access.
Role-based access. Okay. Throw them out.
yeah, I think another one is like the new file setup add-on. Just, hey, here's a bunch of custom functions and other stuff that we find useful that doesn't really solve a particular issue.
Like a launching pad.
Right, that doesn't
Yeah.
solve any issues on its own, but it's like, hey, here's a toolkit, that you may find useful.
Yeah, so
there's
sort of
nothing-
a do-it-like harmonic.
Right.
Right, and there's nothing that precludes someone from taking custom functions, scripts, etc., that were added to a file via an add-on and copying them, putting them somewhere else.
Yeah, yeah.
Payment processing.
A payment processing add-on, I like it.
Email.
I mean, go even further, saying accounting.
Kind of like a postmaster add-on, maybe. Any other ideas? No wrong answers here.
Other complicated API integrations.
Yeah.
In general, yeah.
Time manipulation and formatting.
Time, formatting. You know, maybe we could become the experts in JavaScript time manipulation via FileMaker add-ons.
That's a long
Just
title.
add to the confusion. All right, so, and this kind of gets into, you know, what kind of add-ons would we like to see from ourselves and others, like stuff that's not out there, what do we want to see? Clearly there's some things here that we could be working on. Anybody have kind of a, man, I can't wait until there's an add-on for,
Doing,
for reversing time, okay.
Add more hours in the day.
We want time and space manipulation.
Yes.
I love it. We can get these under an hour with that tool. All right.
I'm actually really excited about the JavaScript integration in general, and I'm really excited to see what all may come down the line. There's so many times when I just want to, or we're talking about time and stuff, I look at dates and times on the screen and I want to visualize that. I just want to throw a thing out here on the screen that's going to take it and visualize that for me.
Yeah.
And, you know, FileMaker just doesn't do that. And I know we have some calendar add-ons and stuff, but I would like something that is just really that simple. I want to
Yeah.
visualize these times. I'm just going to pull it out here and
Yeah,
let
so
it show me the day.
charting kind of things, dashboarding kind of things, and little bits, right, that you can just add this, add that.
Like you could add an analog clock next
Yeah.
to a timestamp, right?
Yeah.
I'd like that.
Something that came to mind earlier that I think it could potentially be useful in this spirit is, I know something Robert and I have worked on, is our FileMaker DDR XML reader thing that reads the FileMaker XML from the DDR and explodes it out into records and that kind of thing. Well, there's the whole engine under the hood that's doing that, and you know of XSLT files that are custom written by us to read the XML DDR. So something like that isn't really layout objects or things like that, but it's this whole engine component that requires, you know, files and other stuff. I mean, because there's container fields in there that hold the XSLT files and stuff, and just have that whole thing just work and do it. So other things like that we've built that are more engines rather than UI tools.
Yeah, so maybe that gets into also some kind of versioning tools, right? As we have more flexibility, wouldn't it be cool once we get our kind of RoboDBA ambitions in motion and we versioning processes and so forth, FileMaker's clearly skating towards being able to let us use a patch tool to upgrade FileMaker. These add-ons are completely operating off of that XML code. So if we have the ability to build that stuff and make it work, wouldn't it be cool then to be able to go back to customer A, B, C, D, E, F, G and just add it, right? And then we can, boom, we can tie them into our versioning model. Would be really cool. All right, last bullet point. Access to the marketplace via add-ons. What kind of other opportunities does that maybe open the door to? And I think Heather threw this bullet point out there, so I'm gonna ask her what she was thinking there first of all.
Well, when you're on the marketplace, you're looking at an add-on, if you're interested in buying it, you're not actually going to buy it from Claris,
Yeah, okay.
right? You're going to select the View More, and it's going to take you to that vendor's site, right? And their page for that add-on.
So the question is, how do we do add-on clickbait?
Right.
Right. I like it.
I wasn't going to put it that way, but that, I mean, as long as the, hey, this looks cool, and somebody's going to click on it to look at more,
Right.
well, what else might we want to talk about in that place that they land?
You won't believe these 5 add-ons.
But perhaps if someone's interested in one of our add-ons, if, depending on what add-ons we put out there, they might help to steer the right customers to us, customers that are the right type of customers that we're looking for.
Right.
If we have an add-on there that would appeal to the customers that have systems that we tend to be working on, then that might be a place for us to, hey, oh, you were interested in that. Maybe you're also interested in, let's talk about, so there may be marketing opportunity there.
Interesting.
So
Yeah.
I think maybe some thought could be put into that. What kind of add-ons could we put out there as, what,
As clickbait.
yeah.
Yeah.
So it's really
I
just
didn't
there
say
to drive traffic. I mean, that's what it is.
Exactly. I mean, obviously, you
Yeah,
don't want to
not
put something.
necessarily product itself, but and that kind of gets like to this FileMaker, a tips and tricks package, right?
Right.
You want to build a system like us? Here's all the stuff we
Right,
usually
and not to
use.
suggest that we would put something that has no value there
Yeah, yeah.
just to get people to come our way, but why not?
Right.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's similar to, there's other FileMaker developers, consulting companies out there that have, releasing demo files, right? Of here's how to do a Google Calendar integration, right? And it's 2 layouts and super simple and a script, but you're able to take that and then kind of reverse engineer it a little bit and figure out how to do it. And because of
Right.
that, you now know that company's name. And you're now
Right.
going to their site for, okay, well, what else do they have?
Right.
And maybe I should go visit their booth at DevCon and then,
Get a job?
sorry, engage, right? And get a job. Not that I would know anything about that, right? Or different things like that. So it's the same thing, just a different method of doing that.
Yeah, I
So
think,
we got you with clickbait, you're saying.
I just think it's a potential opportunity that we shouldn't ignore. If we're going to put something out there, then we should be thinking about, we should be prepared to follow up.
Yeah. All right. I think we're going to call it there. This has been great. Thanks, everyone. I see that we have switched cameras on us. That's for whatever reason. That's all right. So thanks, everybody, for joining us, who was able to join us virtually. Thanks to my team for joining the conversation. Obviously, there's a lot more for us to pursue and follow up on here, and we'll certainly be doing that. So until next time, enjoy your add-ons.
Thanks for joining us at Harmonic Software Production Studios' monthly public brain trust. Now, we want to invite you back next month, Friday, November 13th. Yes, for those with triskaidekaphobia, it'll be a blast. Come on back and see us. We look forward to it.